Following the leak of the massive decision to overturn the right to a safe and legal abortion in over half the country by a very, very conservative Supreme Court, Democratic leadership has decided to show their support for reproductive rights by throwing their weight behind an anti-choice conservative Democrat in a hotly contested Texas primary. Oh, well, there's that. According to the Texas Tribune, the number 3 Democrat in the House of Representatives, Jim Clyburn, had visited Texas to campaign with U.S. Representative Henry Cuellar. Henry Cuellar, one of the most corrupt Democrats in the House. Also, again, incredibly conservative. Cuellar is running in a primary as an anti-abortion conservative Democrat. Now, he voted in the House against, the only Democrat in the House to vote against codifying reproductive rights, Roe v. Wade, and has the support of not only Jim Clyburn, but also House Speaker Nancy Pelosi and the number 2 House Democrat, Majority Leader Steny Hoyer. By the way, during the campaign and these visits, their names, Hoyer, Pelosi, and Clyburn, were featured prominently on campaign literature that was handed out, because of course it was. Oh, yes. Now, before I get to Clyburn, because he had some statements that I want to read and respond to, as well as Cuellar's challenger, Jessica Cisneros, I just want to note that after this leak had happened, Democrats fundraised their ass off. They have promised, and by the way, this is on the promise of defending reproductive rights. Now, they actually raised an eye-popping $12 million in one day. And I think of that money, I think of what it actually could do for a real progressive challenger, and it makes me honestly sad. What a waste of money. You can give it to the Democrats? You can give it to the people who had a chance to codify Roe v. Wade and didn't? You're going to give it to Democratic leadership, who now sits there and supports an anti-choice Democrat. No. You might as well just light it on fire. Don't do that. Give it to a progressive instead. All right. Anyway, let's go to Clyburn here. Here's what he told reporters after an evening rally at an outdoor barbecue. Here's what he said. Quote, on Cuellar specifically. We have a big tent party. And if we're going to be a big tent party, we've got to be a big tent party. Okay, then. Great. Then he adds, I don't believe we ought to have a litmus test in the Democratic Party. I think we have to bring in as many people into the party as we possibly can. Hey, you know what a litmus test here is? You know what that means in politics? It means having some principles. I mean, principles, it kind of matters to have a principle, right? Because those principles will reflect the policies, or I should say the policies will reflect the person's principles. So, if you care, if your principles are protecting the right to choose for a woman being pro-choice, well then, if you're, not pro-choice, then you don't really belong in the Democratic Party that purports to be the protectors of choice for women. Now, again, let me be real clear about this, right? Pro-choice, it's pro-choice. It means that if you want to get an abortion, you can. If you don't want to get an abortion, you don't have to. Don't do it. That means it is your choice. You have the choice. You have agency over your own body. And by the way, if you're anti-abortion, you don't have to have one. That's what pro-choice is. That's what pro-choice is. And so, look, if you're saying, hey, look, I don't agree with Henry Cuellar, but I think we should have a big tent and let anti-choice Democrats into our party. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't want people in the Democratic Party that are against a woman's freedom to choose her reproductive rights. Okay? I don't want to be with people who don't believe that women should have the agency over their own bodies. And by the way, sure, you can have personal beliefs, right? That, oh, I'm personally against abortion. Okay, but if you're not going to legislate it, and this is what's important, because again, we're talking about pro-choice here, right? Even if you're personally against getting an abortion, you can still say that I can't make the choice for someone else. That's what makes you pro-choice. It's not my decision if you get an abortion or not. It is not my life. It is not my body. It's not the government's decision either. It shouldn't be. Yeah, and by the way, Roe has its own limits. Up into the moment of viability, 24 weeks by then. That's Roe's limit. Okay? And then the state can come in and regulate abortion. That's it. In a perfect world with zero barriers to access, I think you would think that that would actually be enough time to know that you're pregnant and to be able to make a decision whether or not you want to keep the fetus. Once you hit viability, that's an independent life. And that's according to the scientific consensus. But again, before that, it's your body, it's your choice. Again, I don't hate people who think differently, right? I just don't want them in the Democratic Party making legislation based on their personal beliefs and their religion. I don't believe in your religion. I'm not going to let you and your book that I don't believe in control my life. That's not the place for it. You want to go and believe in your own religion, you want to go and follow the tenets of your religion, that's totally fine. I'll fight for your right to do that. That is called religious liberty. That is called religious freedom. But by the way, just like you have the freedom of religion, I have the freedom from it. And it does not control my life. So let's get that real straight. All right? Now, Clyburn. Let's go back to him. Clyburn asked, he said, which is more important, to have a pro-life Democrat or to have an anti-abortion Republican? Because come November, that could be, well, the choice in this district. How is that different? That's the same thing. It's literally the same policy position. Look, on economic policy, Democrats or Republicans are pretty much the same. They both choose austerity. They both favor corporations. The real differences are the social issues, right? And again, on the social issues, Republicans are monstrous. I mean, again, you've seen what they're doing. They're trying to take away education. They're trying to take away civil rights from gay people. They're trying to take away the right for a woman to control her own body. Monstrous. Total monsters. But now if you have a Democrat that's going to vote the same way like he voted not to codify Roe v. Wade, then what is the functional difference between the two? I don't see one. I don't see one at all. It's the same. Why should a Democrat be forced to vote for a conservative on the issue of reproductive rights? You think that's going to depress turnout? Yes. And again, if you're a Republican, why as a Republican would you vote for a conservative Democrat when you could just vote for a Republican? That's what they're going to do. They're not going to vote for Republican light. They're going to vote for the Republican. Because again, they think all the Democrats are Satan-worshiping pedophiles. So, I mean, this whole thing's insane. Now, there's another thing that he said that was interesting. Another quote. We have to sit down with people with whom we do not agree and try to find common ground so that you do what is necessary to continue moving this country forward. Now, look, I don't have a problem with sitting down with people who disagree with me and having good, honest conversations. I thrive on it. I love it. But I don't think Jim Clyburn does. Because I would ask Jim, hey, Jim, does that include socialists? Does that include people like Bernie Sanders? Would you like to sit down with them, who you obviously do not agree with, to try to find common ground? No. He hates Bernie Sanders. He hates progressives. He hates the left. Every time a progressive runs in a primary election, here comes Jim Clyburn. They sent him down to crush these progressives, along with their millions of dollars in television ads paid for by giant corporate PACs, DCCC money, Republican donors. For example, the Democratic majority of Israel, they're running ads in Texas right now. They had run ads in Ohio against Nina Turner in a very small race. So what Clyburn means is that, oh, no. See, we have to sit down and find common ground with Republicans. And that common ground just happens to be our combined hatred for the left and our love of taking corporate money. That's what it is. They will always both agree on one thing. We must crush the left in this country. That's why Pelosi, Clyburn, Hoyer, and all the Democratic leadership would rather choose to support an anti-choice Democrat who was raided by the FBI, by the way, and has a few shady ties to Azerbaijani oil interests over a pro-choice progressive. Jessica Cisneros actually happens to be in favor of women's bodily autonomy, pro-choice. She's also in favor of Medicare for all, voting rights, the For the People Act, $15 minimum wage, indexed to inflation. By the way, that's very important. Expanding Social Security, many other popular policies that would actually help regular people. There's the difference, and it's big. By the way, Cisneros put out a statement after the leaked draft of the decision on Roe v. Wade. Here's what she said. With the House majority in the line, Cuellar could very much be the deciding vote on the future of our reproductive rights, and we cannot afford to take that risk. 100%. I hope Democratic Party leadership won't stand in the way of delivering for South Texans. Well, unfortunately, that's exactly what they're doing. When asked, by the way, the same question, Cuellar reiterated the statement he issued Tuesday evening, saying that he had criticized the draft opinion, saying that it's not based on precedent, as if Republicans give a shit, and not incremental in nature like they should be, but then told reporters, I'm a Catholic, and you know my position, adding that many people in this district believe at least some sort of limitation on exception. Again, what do you think Roe does? Roe puts limitations on abortion, but then also guarantees it as a right up until viability. It's exactly what Roe does. But what the important thing here is, how are you going to vote, Henry? How are you going to vote on codifying Roe v. Wade so that women have these protections against these laws that are trying to ban abortion completely, and not just put limitations on it? They want to ban it completely, even in the cases of rape and incest. Well, for Cuellar, we already know the answer because he has already voted on that. And he said, big fat no. And yet here the Democratic leadership is. They're saying, oh, we're fine with that. And not only are we fine with that, we are going to protect him. We're going to go stump for him. Well, I mean, that's their prerogative. And that's all while raising money off the people who are very scared, incredibly afraid, because they're losing their rights. Now, at the end of the day, do not send the Democratic Party any money. Stop. You know why? Because it's going to people like Cuellar. And I guess unless you agree with him. Unless you agree that women shouldn't be allowed to make their own decisions. Because that's essentially, policy-wise, what he voted for. But if you have a specific politician in mind that's in a primary that you want to see win, then you should send it directly to them and not to the DCCC. Not to them. Stop giving money to the party. They obviously don't need it because they get a lot of money from corporations anyway. And at the end of the day, they do not give a damn about their so-called principles.